I went to church today, the first time in a long time that I've been to church. And I went because of a family gathering. And I could have just gone to the family gathering after the church service, but I wanted to actually observe the church service in order to see how people are being lulled to sleep because I'd kind of forgotten because it's been so long since I've been to church. And so I was able to observe the church setting itself. And like I said, this was pretty much a study for me where I was looking to see, what how people spiritually die within the church, within the modern day church. And I walk into this church. It's a huge church. They have the bags, like at Walmart where they have like the plastic bags that you put your umbrella in so that you don't drip water on the floor. So they had that there. And so that automatically gave me the feeling of it being a business. And there are other things like they had like bird cage. They had a lot of other rooms that weren't associated with the church, like they had a gym and things like that. And it was just like a very dramatic, like an overpowering setting, where you walk into a church and it's like, wow, this church has everything. It's the kind of church that everyone would want to go to. It really pulls you in. And the people, they look nice, they smelled nice, they were nice. However, in observing these people, you also got the sense that they lived a life diametrically opposed to the life that Jesus lived. These people, you could tell, are loved by the world. They're kind, everyone loves them. Whereas Jesus, he was not loved by the world. Um, these people at the church, you could tell that no one would kill them for their beliefs. Like their beliefs are not so diametrically opposed to the world that they would be killed for them, whereas Jesus was killed for what he preached. And in looking at these people, these people who smell great, and all I kept thinking to myself is, wow, spiritual death smells so good. Like these people, they look great. They had no, foul odor of any kind of, decaying of the spiritual death. Like spiritual death doesn't have a smell, but if it were to have a smell, you would expect it to have the smell of something spoiled, something rotten. But these people, they smell great and they look great. And you would never think to yourself, the first thought that would come to your mind would not be these people are spiritually dead. But in listening to the pastor and watching the people further, I realized that the reason why they had become spiritually dead is because the church has been completely commodified, because the church is now a building where people go in order to be entertained, in order to have their senses overloaded with wonderful music, wonderful sights, wonderful smells, kind people. It's just all this kindness, all this beauty, all this entertainment. And we really lose sight of what the church is supposed to be for. And actually, this when I went to the church today, the pastor didn't even preach a sermon. And no one seemed to care, because there was so much entertainment going on. Like there was some music, there were the announcements, and no one seemed to like. You would think that if you go to church, you pay your offering, and the preacher doesn't preach a sermon, you would think that people would be like, okay, I paid my money, I drove across town to hear the word of God, and I didn't hear it, so you would think that people would be a little concerned, but they weren't. And you almost got the sense that they were relieved. Like people go to church as a duty, and then when they get out of church, they're relieved. It's like, oh, well, great. It wasn't too long. But it's like no one seemed to mind, and you could tell there's a cult of personality where this pastor was so charismatic, and you could tell everyone loved him. He's speaking to everyone. He has a smile. He's very likable. You could tell that it was the cult of personality where people were drawn to him more so than they were um, to Christ. And so you have the cult of personality. You have the church as a business. With all these different things going on that aren't church related, but that have the feel of a very an upscale business, or even a Walmart. Um, you have the nicely dressed people, which is another distraction, because if everyone's nicely dressed, you think to yourself, it has, nice hairdos and all that, you think to yourself, you're concerned rather than thinking about getting yourself prepared for the word is getting the nicest outfit so that you can compete or blend in with the other well-dressed people. So, that's another thing. The dress, the smells, everyone smelled great or didn't have an odor, um, so you could tell that they spent a lot of time grooming. Um, and, it was just, but to my spirit, I was sickened by the sight, because it's almost like, with funerals where they dress the body up, like they clean the body, they put makeup on the body, they put a nice suit or a nice dress on the body, and they lay it in the coffin, and they glue its eyes shut, and they try to make it appear so it's sleeping, but it's dead, and it's almost like that's what the church does. It's like it fixes up this, and it goes through the motions like communion. The first Sunday is communion, so they go through the motions of drinking the sugary grape juice and the nasty little bread tablets, and it's dressed up in order to be the shadow of, or it's supposed to be like the Old Testament being the shadow of things to come, but it's not that, because that is already past. So what is this? This is a commodification of the torture of Christ, like it's a commodification of the torture of Christ. Just let that sink in. That's what I was seeing. Like, you have the church, you have the pastor as the replacement Christ. He's charismatic. People are drawn to him. You have the sugary grape juice that tastes good, and that's supposed to be, you know, you're drinking his blood, and the dry cracker, you're eating his flesh. And people do this, every first Sunday. And, you have the ushers dressed nice, and they have their routines that they go through where they, go row to row, passing out the communion. And it's very organized, it's very sanitized, it's very sterile, and it's very dead. The church setting is very dead. It's almost like they're frozen in time. It's almost like they go through the same motion week after week, month after month, year after year. And the pastor, who knows? I mean, maybe he rotates his sermons, but it's like they're in just a never ending cycle that they can't break out of, but they're being entertained and they're being pacified to the point where they don't have the desire to wake up. Like, because really, if you were to live a life like Christ lived, at any moment you would be ready to die for what you believe in. You don't get that sense in the church. You don't get the sense that most of the people there will be willing to die for what they believe in. You get the sense that they want to look good, they want to smell good, they want to be kind people, which is great. I mean, it's great to be kind, it's great to be giving, but that's part of the cycle, and breaking out of that cycle means not loving the world, not loving your life and loving the world more than you love Christ, meaning that you're willing to give up the world and give up your routines in order for Christ. But with their senses overloaded with the entertainment and the habitualness, being comfort and familiarity, the cult of personality, they just get stuck in this cycle. And, although, death is scary, you can understand why people would fear death, but I think it's more the fact that they're just stuck in this cycle, and it's comfortable for them. To the point where even like today, the preacher didn't preach a sermon, but with the cult of personality and with the routine, they're like, okay, you go to church at this time, you get out at that time. You go to church at this time, you get out at that time. If you get out early, then great, you can do whatever else you had planned, but it's a routine, it's a routine. They're comfortable in a routine. They're amongst other people who look good and smell good. And no one is getting convicted. Like, no one is really, I don't know. I just feel like the church is where you go to die. I feel like the modern day church is where you go to spiritually die. And in order to wake up spiritually, you have to really read the Bible on your own and really strive on your own to live a life like Christ lived. And I mean, if you're able to find another person who's also really reading and understanding Christ's life and wanting to live a life like Christ lived, and perhaps die a death like Christ died, if it takes that, then hey, you're lucky. But and this is just my experience going to church today, after a long, 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 long time not going. That place is death. It's death.